Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first edition of New to WCW. I'm Mr. Warren Hayes, and I am joined by Kristen Ashly, who is new to WCW. Isn't that right, Kristen?
Brand new.
Basically, the idea of the show here is we're going to be revisiting some moments, pay-per-views, seminal moments in the history of WCW Nitro, because Kristen isn't quite familiar with WCW history, but there's a good reason for that. What are the reasons for that, Kristen?
Well, first I was like 9 years old when it first started coming out. Also, I'm I guess what the kids call like a contemporary fan. So I didn't start watching until like 2014. And also I cover women's wrestling. That kind of takes out like multiple decades of not really needing to watch certain programs.
Which is completely understandable. And yet, you always hear talk about the Monday Night Wars and how Nitro was important and so on and so forth. So it's a good way to dive back into it for myself. A new way to broaden your wrestling horizons as well. So either or, if you're watching right now, hopefully it'll either be one of those. Either you'll get to revisit some great moments with us, or you'll get to discover something completely new that you didn't quite know about the wacky world of professional wrestling. So today we are going to be talking about the very first edition of Monday Nitro, the very first Nitro that happened on September 4th, 1995, live from the Mall of America. Now, this is a significant moment in wrestling history, Kristen, because from at that moment in time, WWE had been airing pretty much unopposed whatever they wanted to do on USA Network on Monday nights. Monday Night Raw had been on since 1993, and they'd been doing pretty much whatever they wanted. And the big draw for Nitro was going to be aired live week after week, whereas WWF would pre-tape a bunch of stuff and then extend that over a few weeks. Eric Bischoff, Ted Turner decided that they wanted to compete, wanted to go head-to-head, so this was a big deal. WCW felt that it was in a position where it could compete with WWF because it had hired a lot of WWF's big name talent. Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage. There was a lot of older guys who were leaving WWF that WCW made big plays to gobble up. Despite the fact that Hogan and Savage at that time were getting up a little in years, wasn't exactly like today where guys in their 40s could still be at the peak of their career. Back then, the wear and tear of the bodies and the stiffness of the ring were contributing factors to the wear and tear of the bodies.
Among other things, right?
Among other things.
The Undertaker so gracefully left out of his little comments.
Absolutely.
Among other things.
Hey, Hulk Hogan didn't quite leave WWF because everything was peachy keen and rosy. You know, there was a little thing called the steroid trial that happened some time previous. So, but hey, that's a whole other story. That's for a whole other time. Tonight we're starting in the Mall of America. Do you know why they decided to go out to the Mall of America, Kristen?
No.
WCW stalwart Kevin Sullivan once said that they went to the Mall of America because malls were hot at the time.
Oh,
right. Because the Mall of America was the biggest one around, so it looked like a packed venue, despite the fact that they weren't in an arena. And it was a really great gamble because you mentioned it yourself when we were watching it. There were people everywhere.
There were cops everywhere. Like real, like in uniform cops. Just in case. And there were like escalators. And it was weird because there were a ton of people, but it was like silent during some moments. They were very polite for a crowd. And then there were escalators that were going up and down, and people would be riding, the same people I noticed, would be riding up and down these escalators watching, which I thought was brilliant. It's brilliant because if you're stuck because he's a top level, you're behind a bunch of me, right? I'm 5'1", I'm short, I can't see anything. But if I'm on an escalator, not only am I seeing like way more, but then there's like other angles you get to get at. And so they're smart. They were smart.
You do the max that you can before the motion sickness kicks in.
Right.
Our broadcast team for the very first Nitro was Eric Bischoff, formerly a C-team broadcaster for the WCW crew, who rose in the ranks legendarily. The stories are very, very well documented at this point, and he was helming the play-by-play position. He also had with him Bobby the Brain Heenan, another WWF defection who had joined WCW previously. Smart move to put another well-known and well-loved name from WWF, because Heenan had always had a fantastic following. And making his debut on commentary, Kristen, along with his little chihuahua, Steve Mongo McMichael.
I think I called him Mango a few times by accident.
I wish his nickname was Mango. Of course, Steve McMichael was a football player for the Bears. He was an All-American defensive tackle for the University of Texas. He played in the NFL for the Bears. Was part of that legendary Chicago Bears 1985 Super Bowl team. And he had dipped his toes in pro wrestling previous to this. He was one of Lawrence Taylor's backup men during his match with Bam Bam Bigelow at WrestleMania 11.
Anything but the Bears.
Anything but the Bears.
Boo. Boo.
They really tried to get some banter going between Bobby Heenan and Mongo, but Mongo was so green and Heenan was trying so hard to get something out of it. It was really rough. We got treated with our first match of the evening that pitted Brian Pillman against Jushin Thunder Liger, all the way from New Japan Pro Wrestling. This was a rematch of their Super Brawl 92 match, which is considered one of the best that these two have ever put on. Liger early on hits a moonsault. There's a Hurricane Rana by Pillman. It's a little messy, but it still works. We get a standing surfboard by Liger, which was hot stuff and not something that you saw a lot on American TV at the time. We get a Liger bomb as well. I laughed at some point because Pillman hits a tornado DDT and Bischoff does what a maneuver! Like he doesn't know what it is. And and Bobby Heenan goes, he DDT'd that man off the second rope.
Yeah, it was probably the most wrestling match of the whole show. It was I was surprised. I was really enamored by it. Like I couldn't stop. It was like a real match. I was like, oh, this is a surprise, because we don't actually get like typically real matches to start off a show. And so it was like, oh, it was very new for me. I was like, ooh. And then you had mentioned that WCW and New Japan had a working relationship in the 90s. And I thought, like, how quaint. How awesome is that? But I do, I have a note about the surfboard move. It was surprising because, everything I hear about WCW, I hear, like, highly gimmicked. And, you think of Hulk Hogan, you think of Randy Savage, you think of those guys. And so I'm expecting, like, not wrestling at all. So I was very surprised.
Well, it was a very indicative match of what WCW would get to be known for, at least among hardcore wrestling fans. Eric Bischoff, in numerous interviews since then, has said that one of his goals was to really make, on one hand, WCW an international brand. So having a working relationship with New Japan and bringing these international stars like Liger, like Great Muta as well, would be something that would help differentiate WCW from what WWF was doing. But also the cruiserweights, the light heavyweights, whatever you want to call them, the junior heavyweights. That was a big deal. WWF never put as much stock into the smaller guys, but WCW did have its division, and this was a showcase of what would become eventually the cruiserweight division, which would introduce us to people like Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio and Dean Malenko, Chris Jericho, so on and so forth. It would be a spawning ground for all these great talents to be able to get some spotlight, despite the fact that in North America we were still all about the big burly guys with the big 24-inch pythons. After this match, we cut to a segment somewhere in the Mall of America, taped earlier today. Kristen.
Oh my God, yes.
We get introduced to Hulk Hogan's brand new business venture, Pastamania. You have a bunch of kids surrounding Hulk Hogan, who is signing autographs in the food court of the Mall of America.
They're super excited about pasta.
And he is so stoked about pasta, Kristen. He is so incredibly stoked about it. And why would you not be stoked? Especially when you can mix and match pastas, Kristen.
I know. International pastas.
And on top of that,
around the world.
Yes, exactly.
Stuff like beef stroganoff.
And I don't know what turkey tetrazzini is. I think I need to travel more.
Yeah, clearly, I don't even know what pasta mexicana is, unless it's the stuff you get from Hamburger Helper that's got like some taco spices on it.
The attraction here was basically the pasta was shaped like little Hulk Hogan's. Hulkaronis.
For little pasta maniacs. For those children who can't get enough pasta, it's like crack.
Is that the pasta? It looks like those canned pasta, that you get shaped like SpongeBob or Scooby-Doo.
Chef Boyardee stuff. Chef Boyardee in the can.
It looks awful.
I have so many questions. First off, under pastas, what is nuggets? What is nugget pasta? And then Hulk's power pasta is also something that's some interest here. Pasta, chicken, veggies, and your choice of sauce. Okay, the point is that the whole thing is super basic.
Well, yes.
But they will deliver anywhere in the mall.
What?
It's really cool if you see it. It says free delivery anywhere in the mall. So if you're like, I don't know, in the Ray-Ban store, or what was popular in the 90s? A Claire's? If you are to Claire's, and you're like, man, I need some Hulkaroni and cheese. Some poor employee would come to Claire's and give you that. And then another poor Claire's employee would go, could you please get the pasta away from the earrings?
Some poor schmuck working at Pastamania's running around the mall with fettuccine and white clam sauce.
Look, I've tried on enough shoes. I need angel hair and pesto. Delivered to me right now.
You know the story here, Kristen, I don't know if you know about the George Foreman grill, right?
I used to have one.
There you go. And you know all of its great value, how it, the fat would drain and so on and so forth. The story goes that Hulk Hogan and George Foreman had the same agent. And they were pitched the idea, the agent was pitched the idea for the Foreman grill. And originally the Foreman grill was supposed to go to Hogan, but Hogan wasn't there to pick up the phone when the agent called. So the agent was like, well, I'm going to call George Foreman. This is literally the story. This is the legend. I mean, hey, food business was, food business for sports stars was a thing back then. As Eric Bischoff mentioned during that segment, Jordan had his restaurant. Don Shula had a steakhouse, right? So why not Pastamania? So it was a bit, I'm sure Hogan was super bitter that he couldn't get into the food, the sports celebrity food biz.
Well, we see 95 was the Braves year, right? That was their big year.
I'll take your word for it.
It had, okay, well, it was. They went to the Super Bowl. My dad would murder me.
Even I know that you're wrong, just to say.
And we were already in Wisconsin at this point, but family from Georgia, because we lived around Atlanta, bought chocolate bars with the Braves faces on it. We had Chipper Joan chocolate bars sent to us via mail. So yeah, the whole food thing is still kind of a thing. Sure. But WWE still tries to make a thing with the ice cream pops, whatever those were. They still try to do it. I mean, I would lie if I said I hadn't eaten chicken nuggets shaped in like dinosaurs, but I'd never eaten Hulkaroni. And I would have been the key demographic for this. And it was right next to Daddy's Deli.
It was right next to Daddy's Deli.
So that's a hard sell, right next to Daddy's Deli. Like which one do you go to?
Next we had...
Wait, before we continue, I have two questions. Let's discuss this, right? So clearly, either these kids really knew who Hulk Hogan was, which they could have,
yes,
right? Or they were faking it. But my question is, could you do this today? Would it be safe? Like, could you put The Rock or John Cena or like Sasha Banks? Could you put them, like they're stars, right, into a food court safely? Or would nobody know them? Would anyone have any idea who they even are? Would it be safe?
I think we can argue. We could argue, like, maybe on Sasha Banks. Maybe, you know? But I think John Cena and The Rock, I think they get swarmed.
True.
But True. You know, this type of situation, yeah, they'd control it. They wouldn't let any Joe Schmo in here. They'd probably even hire some extras, call the Screen Actors Guild and get some extras in on this. Pretty sure.
Yeah, there wouldn't be smarks.
No.
In the audience. To come up to them and tell them how awful they were on Raw last week and how did you lose your place in the Royal Rumble so quickly, and like they wouldn't want those guys in there.
No, they would not. No, they would not. Next, we moved on to another match. One of the defining WCW feuds. Sting and Ric Flair had a match. Now, this is a historically well-documented feud. Sting and Ric Flair are legendary rivals. This is one of those that has clearly defined WCW pre-Nitro. It was a big deal. So again, makes sense if you're starting your new Nitro show to put on two of the company's biggest stars and probably one of the most storied rivalries of recent years right in there. It makes a lot of sense. But before all of that happened, cut to the camera and there's a gentleman, a blonde gentleman in a mullet wearing a white puffy shirt with jeans that are pulled up way too high, who suddenly saunters down to the ring. Eric Bischoff is losing his mind on commentary. He says, "What is this guy doing here? Kick him out! Kick him out!" Without ever saying who he was. Now, Kristen, did you know who this guy is?
No. I immediately went, Lauren, who's that? Lol.
And I told...
Who is this guy?
Exactly. And I told you it's Lex Luger. And you're like, oh. Lex Luger was a big part of the NWA WCW for many years. And then just around the time Hulk Hogan left, he was picked up by WWF because WWF wanted to make him the new Hulk Hogan, essentially. Because he was blonde,
sure,
built like an ox, like, you know, cut. The kind of body that Vince McMahon really, really loves. He even did a stint in Vince McMahon's world what do they call it? The WBF, the World Bodybuilding Federation. There you go. So he brought him in.
He really likes those bodies.
What's that?
Yeah. He really likes those bodies.
Vince? Oh God, yes.
Yeah.
Oh God, does he ever? You might have heard about the Lex Express, the bus tour that they had. Maybe you've heard people talk about it. They draped Lex Luger in the red, white, and blue, put him on a bus so he could tour Middle America, shake hands, kiss babies like he was on a political rally. This is real, though. This is all real, what I'm telling you. To try and build some heat for him. He stayed in the WWF for a couple of years. It didn't work out. Now, here's the thing. The night before, the Sunday night before this live airing of WCW Nitro, Lex Luger was wrestling in WWF on the Sunday night, and his contract was up at that moment. So he had been contacted by Eric Bischoff and Sting. Sting and Lex Luger, very good friends, by the way. Eric Bischoff decided to bring Luger in so that he could do like a shots fired situation to Vince McMahon, because he was told, Lex Luger was told, I'm going to sign you, I'm going to give you your contract, but you can't tell Vince McMahon that you're leaving. That's the only condition. Luger shows up on Monday night. WWF loses its freaking mind because they just taped weeks of stuff with Luger, and they have to edit him out of all their Monday night stuff.
Yeah. Professional.
He regretted it, though, in later years. He felt bad about it, hindsight 2020, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But as for the match itself, It's a match that if you've seen a Ric Flair Sting match, you've seen them all, and this one wasn't really wasn't one of their best. It was Sting doing gorilla presses. We cut to commercial, we come back, Sting's doing gorilla presses, but then Arn Anderson runs in. He has a glorious windbreaker on, and Arn Anderson, member of the Four Horsemen, good ally of Ric Flair for many, many years, but they're in a feud. Arn comes in and he beats up Flair. It's a whole schmoz. What'd you think of all of this, Kristen?
Well, this is the first I saw of Surfer Sting. I kept calling him the Stinger. Yeah. I was like, who's the Stinger? Like, the Stinger. And then I was like, where's the snow? Right? Like, get the joke? No.
The Stinger and the snow?
Well, no, like AEW, now he comes out and...
I'm sorry. I'm in 1995 right now. You're at, yeah, okay. Where's the snow? Okay.
There was a weird scream that came out of Sting at one point, and I was like, what?
That was this thing.
Was that? I had to look up their ages because Ric Flair, well, neither one of them was like young, but Ric Flair was no young chicken. He was 46 years old at the time, and Sting was 36, and Okay, so Ric Flair to me has always looked old. So he looked older than 46 to me. And I was like, how old is he? How is he still going? And I'm like, he's only 46, but he's still no young chicken. Arn Anderson comes to the ring. And the first thing I can think of is it's WCW's Kevin Owens. I mean, he's so like stoic, and the great windbreaker, which I'm sure my family had a few of those. I don't remember anything from the actual match. Like, I have literally no notes. I was just completely bored by the match and was just looking at everything else and listening to the Stinger.
I'm not surprised that you were bored by the match. It wasn't great. It was very paint by numbers for both Rick and Sting on this one. And after the match, the confusion continues, Kristen. Scott Norton is hanging around the ring, and he has a contract in his hand, and he's going after Bischoff because he wants a match. And then he starts jaw-jacking at Mongo. And then Randy Savage arrives to sort of break all of this up. Do you know who Scott Norton is?
I have no idea. No. It was really a crash course. Which makes me wonder, did anybody in the crowd know who anybody was besides maybe Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan? Did anybody know these people? Because I'm like, who are these people? And you had to tell me all their names.
Well, I mean, Ric Flair, Sting, this was a WCW audience. Yes, they knew who they were. They knew who Hogan was. You can argue that some of them knew who Scott Norton was, but Scott Norton wasn't didn't have much of a presence in North America. He would eventually join the NWO on the B Squad, but Scott Norton's career would really be something else once he went to Japan, because he is a 2-time IWGP heavyweight champion in New Japan. Like, his career in Japan is a whole other 9 yards here. He's a legitimately tough, big dude.
It sort of felt like they were like at a community theater program where they're holding the dancers back and they're letting them go one at a time. Like, you get on stage now. Now you get on. Now you go. I was like, what is going on? Nobody likes anybody. Everyone's yelling at each other.
Again, this would be, the chaos and the unpredictability would become hallmarks of Nitro moving forward. The more that it won week after week, that it would win week after week against Raw is because of that, because of the unpredictable nature of the show. And there's always this stuff happening, so sure, it got chaotic. Maybe wasn't super clear, but the foundations were there for what was to come with Nitro. We got a hype package for Sabu, who was joining WCW. I'm sure you've at least heard of Sabu if you've never seen any of his matches. After this package, he wrestled a total of 4 matches for WCW before he hit the bricks and went on to kill himself in ECW. Not literally, figuratively, of course. Mean Gene announces that some guy won a Harley Davidson.
I forget the name, but I was like, man, that guy is in history books right now. Every time somebody watches this, his name pops up about winning a Harley Davidson. What a lucky guy.
What a lucky guy. Then we got some hype for for the Saturday night show where Dirty Dick Slater is going to take on Johnny B. Bad, and Randy Savage and Sting are going to take on the Blue Bloods. We're made up of Bobby Eaton at that point, Earl Robert Eaton, and Lord Steven Regal, which we all know now under the moniker of William Regal. Interesting to note here, just before we move on, as a footnote, the Blue Bloods, the tag team, was originally supposed to be William Regal, Steven Regal, and a wrestler known as Jean-Paul Levesque, who was supposed to, who moved on to WWF and became Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Mm-hmm.
I really like the French Canadian name though.
And he can't speak a lick of French.
Triple H had a lot of gimmicks, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Couldn't settle on one.
And then we had another segment for Michael Wallstreet, another WWF guy known as IRS, the gentleman known as Mike Rotunda, father to Bray Wyatt and Bo Dallas, basically cutting a promo saying that the new generation is the few generation, and that's why he's in WCW. He's in a very Ted DiBiase $1 Million Man suit, even has the dollar signs on the lapels.
So you know that he has money. It's like Michael Wallstreet. It's like the lamest IRS.
Irwin R. Shyster. It rolls off the tongue.
And like completely opposite of Bray Wyatt.
Sure.
Right? Like Bray Wyatt was like, I'm not doing anything related to my dad. Completely different. And Bo was like, I don't know what you would call Bo.
All over the place is what you'd call Bo.
Neither one of them represented Wallstreet. We'll say that.
Our main event for the first Nitro was Big Bubba Rogers, formerly known in the WWF as Big Boss Man, versus Hulk Hogan himself, debasing himself to be on free TV. Look, this match is punches. We have Rogers doing an avalanche, a backbreaker. Jimmy Hart, who is Hulk Hogan's manager as well. If you guys watch the match, it's very strange. He's distracting the referee so Hogan can cover Rogers' head with a jacket. I'm like, is Hogan a heel? It's very confusing. Rogers hits his sidewalk slam. Hogan hulks up, boot, leg drop. The match is over. Before we get to the post-match angle, what'd you think of all of this, Kristen?
I was too distracted by the crowd behind the match going on that clearly hated Hulk Hogan.
Right?
Like, it was pretty quiet because there wasn't a whole lot of action going on, but there would be people standing up just like really disliking Hulk Hogan.
And they had signs.
Like, they were ahead of their time, those guys. They really knew before we all knew.
They had signs. Yeah. Hogan sucks. Hogan is a wimp. And this is what I noticed. It's mid-match. They stop. They go away from the hard cam for a substantial amount of time. And next thing you know, when they come back to the hard cam, the dudes in the front row don't have their signs anymore. They're gone.
Could you imagine if they did that today? If they were policing the crowd for people who were booing? Now production tells you to. Yeah. Or like, with like, could you imagine like somebody with a Bailey sucks sign or something, or like Jinder Mahal sucks, that they would get escorted out? I mean, the backfire that somebody would get for that, like it would just be insane. So I'm surprised they removed them, frankly.
As we talk further down the road of the Monday Night Wars and stuff, there have been instances of that happening, which did cause a bit of an uproar. And, there's always been rumors that WWE was, before we got into confinement and whatnot, would take away AEW signs before people would get into the buildings. I mean, there's always that kind of stuff that happens. But I think it's just hilarious that they went and they took the Hogan sucks out. Hogan is a wimp. Wow. That's a hard criticism to put on TV. Yeah, the match wasn't much here, but then we get the post-match angle. The Dungeon of Doom run in, Kristen. The Dungeon of Doom were basically set up as a villain factory for Hulk Hogan. This few years before, when Hogan joined WCW, a bunch of weirdos who lived in a dungeon and who all banded together to end Hulkamania.
Oh, okay.
And who were they made up of at this point? Well, they were made up of Kamala, the Ugandan giant. They were made up of Meng, legendary tough guy Meng, John Tenta, who we knew in WCW as and WWF as Typhoon, Earthquake, or whatever. Now he's known as the Shark. And the Zodiac, also known as Brutus the Barber Beefcake, all dressed up in goofy white.
It's like a comic book.
Oh yeah. Oh, this absolutely. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's like a little bit like the League of Nations, right? It was so highly gimmicked that it.
But
yeah,
this is worse. This is worse because these are literal comic book villains, all helmed by Kevin Sullivan, who was, low key a Satanist, but we never use the word Satanist, but yeah. So they all attack Hogan because the Dungeon of Doom wanted to end Hulkamania. Who comes to the rescue of Hulk Hogan? Who comes to the rescue of Hulkamania and all the little Hulkamaniacs out there who are dying to eat their Hulkanoodles? What did we call it?
Hulkaroni.
Who all wanted
I didn't make it up.
Who all wanted to eat their Hulkaroni. Lex Luger runs in, and his genes are still incredibly high. And he and Hogan take out the Dungeon of Doom, and then they cut a promo on each other. Tell me about the promo, Kristen.
We were served something real special. Couple notes. Brother shouldn't be punctuation. It's not a period. It's not a period. But he said it so many times that I couldn't tell you what else was said. Because he's, listen here, brother. You're going to come at me, brother, and brother, you better bring it, brother. I mean, it was unreal. Both were terrible. Both had not practiced or practiced too much. I don't know. But it was so bad. It was so bad.
There was a lot.
Yeah.
There was some back and forth between the two, right? Absolutely. But it was just bad back and forth. So what are you doing here, Luger? You got no business in my backyard, brother. And Luger's going, I've been down the same road as you. I've beaten the same people as you, and I'm sick of playing around with kids.
It was sort of like, like they weren't looking at each other really either. Like they were looking, it's like when someone tells you if you're nervous, look a little bit up or a little bit to the side so you're not looking right in their eyes, and that's what they were doing. And so they were like, listen here, brother. And you're like, what are you looking at? And it was so distracting and so either over-rehearsed or not rehearsed enough.
I don't think it would.
And Luger's haircut.
And his puffy shirt. And Luger was also, I think he was really jockeying for position. Because he was like, no, wait till I'm finished talking. Like at some point he's like, well, cool, calm down, brother.
They sound like when I have a fight verbally and then I'm in the shower and I'm thinking of all the things that I should have said. That's what it sounded like.
Hey, it was on this note that the first Nitro came to an end. Kristen, what did you think overall of the first Nitro? If you looked at it for the first time, does it get your blood pumping to watch more Monday Nitro?
I mean, so I knew who most of these guys were. It was really interesting to see them younger, like Eric Bischoff with his Jim Carrey look from Dumb and Dumber. So really, I was more interested in it's 95 and I was 9 years old, so 95 was this awesome time for me. And so I was really captured by the decade and all the clothes people were wearing and just the characters that WCW thought were cool and Pastamania. And so I was, I'm trying to put myself in the scene, I'm trying to get into that mode more than the wrestling, which is good because there wasn't much real wrestling. No. My hope is that eventually it's less learning who these people are and more actual wrestling.
We'll get you there. Kristen. Yeah. And maybe for a while there'll be a combination of both. And you'll see, there'll be some soaring highs for WCW, but the lows are gonna be delicious. Hulkaroonie, pasta in white clam sauce delicious. That's how great it's going to be.
Delivered to you at Claire's.
I want to thank everyone for tuning in for this very first episode of New to WCW. For Kristen Ashly, I am Mr. Warren Hayes. Thank you all again, and we'll see you next time.